Hi, and welcome to the Weight of Change video and podcast. I'm your host, Carrie. And before we get started, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like our content. My guest on our very first episode is the amazing Diane Lauzon, or better yet, known to the world as Lucy Smiles, a leading global health and wellness advocate, very much enjoying Mexico, where she is based. Welcome to the show, Diane, and why don't you introduce yourself in your own words to our audience?
Thank you, Carrie. I'm so honored to be on your podcast. And so, just a little bit about me. People can get confused. Why Diane? Why Lucy Smile? So I'll take it back 19 years to really explain the relevance of the work that I do and my name, Lucy Smile. So back in 19 years ago, when I was living in Canada, I'm Canadian, now living in Mexico. I had really went through this moment in my life in my late 20s where really this perspective and this perception shifted for me around what I was doing in my life and what I wanted to do with my life. And in that, I started to get creative around wanting to share what I was learning. And when I decided to start a blog back before blogs were blogs, I was literally asked for a username and something just jumped at me to write Lucy Smiles because my nickname as a child was Lucy. And it's almost like my writing was the childlike essence of who I was. If you think about, when we were younger, we had all this magic, we all had all this intuition. And then, scientifically, we don't have to get too much into the science, that you start to kind of lose that magic through adolescence. And so for me, Lucy Smiles is really the catalyst of how we can bring back our inner essence, our childlike innocence, our inner essence to help us to really elevate what we want to do in this world. And so my brand, Lucy Smiles, is really just the birth of my childlike self coming back. And it's carried through with the work that I do in wellness and the work that I do in spirituality, but bringing both the wellness component with our spiritual essence and our intuition. So
And you said you started that in your 20s. What did you start doing, or what kind of changes did you decide to start making?
it's a great question. So I was 29 and I had always worked in corporate Canada. I loved work. I had a really great work ethic. I think a lot of the Gen Xers have that, kind of crazy work ethic. But in that, I was working in corporate. I was living in Vancouver. I had, graduated with business marketing, loved working. And then I would see, like for me, that, loved my role in my career. And then I would get a takeover or the company would get bought out. And then it happened 3 times. And I thought, what is job security for me? And something was calling me to really just, spread my wings kind of out of that cage that I felt in. And in that, I just started to really kind of go on in my life and learn, what else is out there for me. And so I started writing. I started to do some intuitive mentorship. I started to learn around, my own inner essence. And at the same time, which is really relevant for the work that you do, Carrie, I started to have a compromised immunity. I started to see that my body was unwell. And in that, I realized that no matter what we want to do with our life, with our passion, our purpose, our dharma, if our body is not functioning and if we are compromised with this vessel that we are given to literally walk through this earth, right? Then both have to be meshed together. And that's when the catalyst for me was, if I don't feel well, I cannot do well with the passion and purpose that I had. So that's where the health journey started for me, Carrie. I was then on this journey of looking at how can my body really do its own healing. And I absolutely believe that East meets West in when it comes to wellness. There are things that are at our fingertips and accessible to us that really help us from the medical perspective and simultaneously can really work in relation with wellness, with nutrition, with working with cells, working with metabolics. And so as a woman in wellness now, almost 20 years later, really taking my personal experience and meshing it with the work that I get to do now, which is in the wellness space. So back in the day, in my 20s, as I was working in, becoming an entrepreneur and working with my health journey, I realized that both are very important to me. And that's where now I do both. I work with both as an intuitive mentor and as someone who is actually working in the health space with multiple business partners globally around cell health and working with longevity, working with natural nutrition and test-based nutrition is what I'm doing right now. But it all comes full circle for me, Carrie, based on my own journey.
Okay. And Can you tell me, you're talking about wellness, and so many people think wellness has to do with the scale. What does wellness, women's health and wellness mean to
Mm,
you?
Yeah. Wellness for me is that feeling, that sense of I would really actually go right to the nervous system regulation. So for me, when I look back on my path, when I think about when was I feeling unwell and when was I the most well, it was when I was building a relationship to myself. It was when I was, and again, wellness is different for everyone. So when you say what is wellness for me? Wellness for me really, Carrie, is am I treating my body like the vessel that it is? Am I doing the things that I want to do to nurture it? So whether it's sunlight, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's my walks that I do every day, is it waking up and getting that sunlight for me? It's very different for everyone, but it really comes down to a theme, I would say, is the my ability to treat myself in a space that allows me to strengthen who I am, not just my muscles, but strengthen my passion, strengthen my intuition, and all of those things.
And tell me a little bit about your journey. You said you started this sort of in your late 20s. Was there something, you said some of the autoimmune issues you had? Is that when you decided you needed to make a change, or was there something different?
It, w- yeah, it actually was. So ironically enough, so I moved to Vancouver after I had went through some health challenges, and I worked with a naturopathic doctor out of my hometown in Ontario, Canada. And in that, she was actually able to identify some of the challenges that my body was going through. So compromised immunity. And then when I went to Vancouver, I actually then found an endocrinologist, a gastroenterologist, and I worked with medicine at UBC in Vancouver. And I then got diagnosed with celiac. And so that was really, at first I was like, oh my goodness, I felt like I was a victim of circumstance, right? Oh my goodness, how is this happening to me? But then in that, I turned it around and I realized that there's a lesson here. And, when you can cover both areas of not just, East or West, but both together, there is some, alignment for me in the work that I've learned to do that, the body, and there's a lot of workout, there's bodies of work out there, like a Bor Mate, the body keeps the score, the body doesn't lie. So for me, Carrie, on my personal journey, which I can only speak of, is I realized that when you think about something like a compromised immunity, or you think about autoimmune disease, it's the body fighting itself. And so I realized, can I take that lesson and look at where am I fighting in my life that I'm not maybe following my own inner essence? And so through my journey, and again, I don't make medical claims on anything, I was able to actually heal my autoimmune disorder through learning about the tools that were at my fingertips. And it did happen from doctors, naturopathic medicine, nutrition, meditation, and just really bringing back more of an essence of my own homeostasis, if you will, Carrie, that really allowed me then to then teach what I was learning so that I can say, hey, I learned things that I didn't know, and now I know. How can I teach people and still be a student at the same time, right? So as I'm teaching, I'm learning, I'm growing. I'm teaching, I'm learning, I'm growing, and it's really been a journey of 20 years.
I found in my own journey that often it kind of went with my emotional health as well. Did you find that to be true for you?
100%. It's almost like you can't have one without the other. Right. And so I really believe that when your nervous system is calm, when your sleep is better, sleep is a weapon, as you know, right? Especially, I shouldn't say especially for women, but if we want to speak about women, we can like just so much going on. Scientifically, actually, I learned a statistic, and I'm going to kibosh it, but let's just summarize it, where men may have like 40,000 thoughts a day, women have like 87,000 thoughts a day. So we're running on overdrive, Carrie. And so I really believe that when I'm feeling, spiritually well, emotionally well, mentally well, my physical wellness just, kind of is a byproduct of that. And so I believe that, it's an ecosystem. We're not just one thing. And also, I also believe too, that while I believe in specialties and, the brain specialists and organs and heart and, metabolics, our body's an orchestra. And so once we start to, function one well, then the orchestra, all of the body starts to sing like an orchestra. And it's really important for us to remember we're all connected, right? It's not just one separate to the other. We're seriously all connected. And so it's really about creating that relationship with our whole self. I think that really helped me on my own journey.
Tell me a little bit about what you struggled with emotionally, or your kind of emotional journey that, kind of went alongside some of the things you were struggling with physically?
Such a great question. I actually go way back to, I actually can go way back until, so I'm 49, I'll be 50 in May. And when I look back on my maybe patterns of behavior, so way, way back in the day, I actually struggled with an eating disorder. It was very short lived, but long enough lived that it was something. And when I look back on that and I think of how I was able to, through my own, again, everything I say is my own journey. So there's a lot of, professional healing out there, professional support. For me, I didn't end up going that route. I ended up realizing that through my own, maybe like pleasing others and not feeling good enough and feeling like I had to perform more than I had the capacity to, like my capacity to perform was not functioning where I was able to. And so I felt like a lack, and I maybe felt like I was not good enough, or that I had to, that I was trying too hard. And so I had a very short lived, struggle with eating disorders. And a lot of women, many that maybe not even feel comfortable sharing that. I did. I struggled with an eating disorder. When I look back, it had a lot to do with abandonment. It had a lot to do with what's wrong with me. Maybe also as you start to learn other ways of learning about eating disorders, there's a lot of places where you feel like you're out of control. So you try to control. And so once I realized that, and I built a healthier relationship to nutrition, and this was way back in my early 20s, I had not had an issue with it after that. And I think it was just building a relationship to myself, and in paying attention to the emotional component, to the physical byproduct. It really helped me on my journey. But again, there's so much out there in terms of support. And sometimes people just need to know where to go and where to look, and to have that support system, which is readily available for people who are looking for something to support them.
And so over time, how much has stress contributed for you to your health?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I think there's such a correlation, right? Because when we have stress, we overeat, or we don't take care of our health, or our sleep suffers. Sometimes we kind of feel like we're out of control, right? And so I think, making sure that our stress levels are intact. And there's so many things that we could do to support it, right? There's supplements you could take. I work with certain supplements like saffron that help with it. There's meditation, there's nutrition, hydration. There's so many things. And again, I also say, Carrie, you and I had briefly had a chat when we first met, just around relationships, and, one of those things I do believe too is that your environment is going to make or break your ability to function, whether it's function as a mom, function as a business owner, function as an employee, function as anything that it is. Our influence is everything. And so one of the hard things that I had to make a decision in my life was to change my environment. So those are tough things to look at. And sometimes it takes years, or sometimes people are not willing. No judgment, but that was a huge thing for me, is, what is the influence in my direct environment that needed shifting for me to change? And that, I think, ties into, the difference between me surviving and then me learning what thriving looks like.
Yes, absolutely. I completely understand where you're coming from. And I also had sort of a very similar journey where your health and stress really are parallel, and they move with each other. I was in a relationship that had a lot of addiction involved in it, and it's a very difficult journey. So what along that journey was there a moment that you decided you really had to, change where you were or what you were doing to get yourself back to a healthy spot?
Yeah, so I think I think I know similar to you was, maybe going back to that whole, I have to fix everything around me rather than pay attention to, building that relationship with me. So in that as well, made a huge shift in my own relationship just over a year ago. That again was not, and I look back on it again too, and I think, okay, for so long I felt like I had to be the savior, or I had to be the one that was trying to control everything or fix everything, when inside, I made a decision in my life as well too, that I was not well emotionally and not well mentally, and I was compromising my own ability to shine my light. And relationships are a tricky conversation because it's multifaceted. Everyone has their own
Yeah.
dynamic, everyone has their own patterns and triggers and traumas. So for me, I made a decision that was really difficult in my own life, that I needed to separate from the relationship that I was in, not only to help myself, but in that indirectly allowing someone else to shine. Right. And so it takes two to tango, if you will. And while it was a very intimate dynamic of shifting, I have come out and I realized for me that I was not going to be able to be my everything that I needed to be for myself and for my passion and my purpose inside of something that was no longer working in that dynamic. And in that, we have to realize too that there's another participant in that relationship. And while we're not responsible for them, we're responsible for how we show up for ourselves. And then in that, you could allow things to unfold organically and unfold the way they're meant to without that attachment. There's something I learned just recently about divine detachment. And I think it's a thing, right? Being able to detach from outcomes or trying to fix things or make things, or, sometimes we have to just build that relationship with ourselves, and then you can see, what's meant to be in our environment because of our relationship to ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think I don't know if you would agree with me, but so often women put themselves last, whether it's their family, their relationship, the relationship they have with parents. And have you found that in your advocacy for women and their wellness?
Absolutely. One of the things that one of the parts of who I am as a woman and as an intuitive mentor is really working with that, right? And so when I say intuitive mentorship, people say, oh, what does that even mean? Well, even just going, to this morning, I was having a session with a client of mine. She's a business partner of mine. And in that, looking as she's very successful, like multiple, successful businesses, just came back from like a 5-star international trip, such a beautiful soul inside and out. Would have never thought there's anything, upsetting her or conflicting within herself. And she, opened up to me very emotionally. And she had said, I'm not in my essence, and I'm feeling bored, and I'm feeling stressed, and I feel like an empty shell of my being. And so that's all too often happening. But on the outside looking in, we may not notice it. And I really believe that it's time for us to be able to speak our voices, not from like a support victim mentality at all, Carrie, but really what it is like, you know, being honest with ourselves and honest with our environment and honest with the women around us, that sometimes we're not following our own needs. And then we end up being the shell of ourselves. And for some, like myself, again, it was no judgment on my partner, is that what was I allowing in my life that was so, I got so far away from who I really was until it got to a point where it was just, I couldn't do it anymore. Right. And there's no, I should have done it 5 years before, or, if he did this, I'd be better if I did this then. It's not about that. It's really about, can we really take a look and say, okay, are we shining our light? Are we really being the best versions of ourselves? And can we be strong enough, knowing that everyone else will then be better off if we just take care of ourselves first? It really is the oxygen mask, right? It's that cliche, but it's actually, it's true.
Yeah,
We can only
I have
full
found
cup.
that sort of in my own life also to be very, very true. You can't wait for the perfect time. You have to decide for yourself. You're going to take care of yourself and, put your health first, and everything kind of falls into line when we do that. So is there anything you think that women focus on too much that might be the wrong things to get them on a wellness path?
Absolutely. Comparing themselves to everybody else. Right? I mean, everyone's journey of why they are where they are is based on their own journey. Right. And so, there's going to be themes of things that can support you, right? We know, and as you know, as someone who's an expert in the wellness field, we know that, nutrition is key, clean eating is key. But at the end of the day, we also say, like what I also share whenever I'm also, because I do a lot of health coaching and I do intuitive coaching, but really what it is the relationship that we have to certain things. Right. And so our relationship to certain things is going to be different, even if you're best friends with someone or even if you're sisters. It's, again, I really believe it's finding out, what is the best steps for us to take based on who we are, what we have going on. And so it's going to be different for everyone. Not everyone needs to go to the gym 2 hours a day. Sometimes, and everyone's body is different. Everyone is a different age. Everyone has a different relationship dynamic, business dynamic. And I think we need to find out what's the best thing for us to really have a customized nutrition plan, a customized workout plan. Use the tools that are, across the board are important, right? So hydration is important, eating real food is important, getting the proper amount of sleep is important, but also finding out like where in our own lives are there things that we need to eliminate right? Or maybe we need to add. And so I think it's really important for us to see as a whole person individually what that looks like before we can jump on anything. Because I've noticed as well too, Carrie, in my own journey of working with metabolics, I've worked with, fasting, I've worked with, the keto space, I'm working with cell health, I'm working with, personalized test-based nutrition. But the biggest thing for me that I notice is that you can't blanket everyone with the same plan.
So, if I'm hearing you, I also hear a little bit of maybe the mindset or seeing where people are coming from is kind of
Yep.
just as important as the nutrition aspect. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Of course. So when we feel better, we do better. When we feel better, we make better choices. So it starts with at the beginning, right? And so we always start also with baby steps. So, like, say for myself, no matter what I'm going through and having a busy, successful business, having a social life, doing a lot of networking, wanting to be a part of my community, all of those things are, all consuming. So at the same time, I can say, okay, so where can I put me in those equations? So for me, I'm a very, very early to bed. Like, people will not invite me for dinner because I'm in bed by 8:30. Was I always like that? No, when I lived in Canada, I would sometimes eat dinner at 9, go to bed at 10:30, 11, wake up at 7. My lifestyle is very different now that I live in Mexico. And so for me, I know I operate better when I go to bed early. I'm not someone who watches Netflix. I wake up super early in the morning. I like to get my rituals done, my journaling, going for a walk. Maybe I'll go to the rooftop, look at the sunshine as it's raising up. I give to myself first so that I can see when I'm giving to other people that I'm not feeling that I'm at a detriment of my own, self-care, self-pampering, self-love, if you will. And so that for me is really important. Some people love to stay up late. They've got that crazy creative flair until 2 o'clock in the morning. And so that is never going to work for me. But what I do may never work for somebody else. And so we don't want to, you can't create a plan based on the Diane plan versus, say, the, Christine plan. It's going to be different for everyone. When we want to also find, I always say tools work when you use them, but they have to be the right tools in your toolbox that are not going to be the same as, say, my best friend or my sister.
Okay. And when you talked about where you were in Vancouver as to, how your schedule changed in Mexico, what made that change? Was it the place, or did you make different decisions as you moved through those different stages of life?
Yeah, that's actually it's very creative question actually, because well, I actually moved back to Toronto from Vancouver. But I've always loved the Pacific Ocean. But when I look at why I just decided with my husband at the time, who's near and dear to my heart, still super close in my life, when we had made a decision to up and move to Mexico, I always say, like, I wasn't running away from anything. I was following my best path. And so it was a decision that we had created a lifestyle around. So one of the biggest things I also want to share as well too is a lot of times people have a vision, right? I want this, or I desire that, or when that happens, I'll be happy. But what I really believe is create an environment where your options can be expanded. So we had an environment where I was full-time working remote with my business. He was working as an executive with a top company, so most of his stuff was, you know, business analytics overseas. So he was working from home. So we had created an environment where our options were available to us that may be different than they had been 5 years prior. And so the reason why Mexico was even an opportunity was that we had an opportunity to make different choices because of what we had created in our life. And so that to me is really when I think about, like, people who want to attract, that Think and Grow Rich and visualization and The Secret, I always say, create a life that your future self would be doing, right? So if you want something in the future, what would that future person be doing? Act as if now, and that would be maybe working out when you don't want to, putting money away if even if you want to spend it, changing couple of habits that maybe are not conducive to what that future person is attracting, right? And so that was the reason why we moved to Mexico, was that it was an option. It was something that we had never done before. We had never been to Mexico, either of us, and we kind of went from zero to moving within 4 months of a decision, but it was available to us based on how we created our life.
And what would you say is something women could do in their lives, starting today or tomorrow, that would really make an impact on them trying to get healthy?
I would say audit who you're hanging out with. Like truly. May sound so cheesy, Carrie, but it's literally who are you hanging out with? What are you talking about? Right? Are you supportive? Are you raising people up? Are you hanging around with women in rooms that are who you want to be? Right? And again, it sounds like we hear it all the time. We've heard it for decades. But truly it is like what room are you in? And
Mhm.
how are you participating and an active participant in that room? Right? Are you giving or are you taking? Are you looking to get or are you looking like how can I when I leave this room have it better than when I walked in? And in that as well, not being the smartest one in the room as well. Right. And the other thing I also would love to say too, and these are not, I'm not coining these as mine, but these are things that I learned along the way that are very valuable is, whenever you're with other people, are you really, elevating who you are? Right? Are you really elevating who you are? Are you really taking advice from people who are where you actually want to be? Or are you allowing people's advice to infiltrate your mindset when they're not where you want to be or where they're not supportive of where you're going? It's very important. It's very, very important. And again, you don't have to, as one of my mentors used to say, you don't have to have a friendectomy. You don't have to divorce your friends. However, you have to be more mindful of how much time are you giving and audit your life. Like audit that and say, because again, if we're the 5 people that we hang out with, change who you're hanging out with. And it doesn't have to be a broadcast. You don't have to broadcast it, but slowly think about putting yourself in the room that's going to be conducive to the future you.
Yes, and it is so important too that you're around supportive women that lift you up, and that for me myself, I want to be that for other women and other people to kind of say, hey, you know, do this together and get healthy, and that kind of support means so much to
Mm,
someone. And so, like,
yeah.
what kind of advice would you give to a woman, say, in her 40s or 50s, that feel like she's just gone too far, the wrong way in her health?
Great question. You got some great questions today, Carrie. So I would honestly say one of the biggest things I would say is look back on the times that you've thrived. Like pull that energy of when you have achieved something and remember that like it's possible to do it again, anything. And I've done that in the past. Like whenever I have these, we all go through these ups and downs. We all go through it. The one thing that we know is that everything is temporary, right? So wherever you are right now, it doesn't have to be the same place that you're going to be in 6 months or 6 years. But that future is going to be indicative on what you're thinking now, who you're hanging out with. But if you're feeling like you're just so far gone in whatever way that is, remind yourself of your worth by looking at the times that you have succeeded, the times that you got out of something. We've all been through stuff. I mean, not to be morbid, but we probably haven't gone through the worst that we're ever going to go through, but we also haven't had the best that we're ever going to have yet, right? And so can you pull the past you that has really created things where you're like, wow, I could be so proud of that. Pull that energy of that woman in, and sometimes she has to come into this moment. It's really important what your mindset is, right? Because our frequency is what we attract. It's a science, not woo woo. Our frequency is what we attract. So if we're low frequency and there's opportunity here, but we're here, what can you do to raise your frequency? And it does come from meditation, really great podcasts, right? You know, reading books, hanging around with people, I always call it mood food. So what is the mood food that you're eating? Because if you're eating food that's going to lower your mood, like your body is energy. So and it goes right back to all of the work that you're doing, Carrie. Nutrition is not just nutrition. It literally creates an ecosystem of what we're here for, how we can operate our life, and it also changes who we hang out with.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. That does, it's kind of like when you can get your mind in the right place, you can accomplish so much
Yeah.
um, to do that. And I think it's good for women to get around other women that are either exercising or walking groups or things, just to be around, get that support for
Yeah.
women. And so tell me, now that you are in this place, sounds like a really good place in your life. When do you feel the most alive, or do you feel like you're back to the person that you've wanted to be?
Also, when I'm with women, when I'm having amazing conversations, when I'm asking like, how can I support you, or what's been going on, or like doing things that mean a lot, that just juicy, amazing conversations with women truly is where I get the most fulfilled. Love men all day long. You know, my brother's my best friend. I've got great guys in my life, but I will say, like, when women are very authentic and they're in their essence and they're in their genuine like who they really, really are, and they stop trying to be everything to everybody else and they start trying like just being who they really are and bringing that together and reminding each other of that. There's a huge power there, Carrie. There's a huge power there, and I say it because a lot of the work I do is on Zooms, is being with people in my environment, going to meetings, being in networking, and it's a lot of that energy. Like we literally come together as a mastermind, as a collective. It changes your energy, it changes your excitement for life, right? It really does fuel us up. And so I would say for women, like get around the women that want to raise you up and raise them up. Ask them, what can I do to support you? What do you have going on? Is there a project? Is there an offering? And really get tangible. I talked about it this morning with a mentor of mine. She said, like, it's all about the meat and potatoes, right? There's all this high level stuff that's always happening, but when it comes down, what's the meat and potatoes? It's connections, it's relationship capital, it's support, it's getting off of your phone, it's stopping the scroll and getting out there. And so I think that's really important for us. We have so much social media, so much technology. Don't get me wrong, AI has its place, but we need to get back to the old school, hanging out without being on our phones. Go out for lunch and actually connect. We're losing that connection. So I would say for women, if there's one thing you could do, like who can you connect to that is healthy and it's going to be allowing you to thrive in the ways that you deserve.
And you mentioned getting the right amount of sleep. I'm exactly the same way. I think, past 9 o'clock and I don't know what's going on in the world. And so what habit would you say, one or two habits that you were actually able to make habits and change in your life had the most impact on you?
Movement. It just movement. If you're really busy and you're in front of your screen and you're in a super successful, you love what you do, sometimes we forget to move, right? And so even just today, I had a meeting, an hour between meetings, and I was like, and I talked to myself, I said, just get out, go, get out. So I literally didn't go shopping, didn't buy anything. I just walked to the neighborhoods. I live in the historical center of Mazatlan. And so I'm like walking and I came back and I was just different. I was just different. And so for me, it could be really, really small. Have a rebounder in your apartment, in your house, in your office, have a little rebounder, $100 on Amazon. Rebound. The lymphatics are so important. If you can, and again, if you're an entrepreneur and you're like, oh, well, I can't afford, massage, all that stuff, barter. I barter with my lymphatic massage therapist. She's amazing. And I barter my product for her service. So find ways to make it work, but move your body. And then also, what does your body needs going to be different from say your best friend, but ask yourself, what do I need? Have that conversation with yourself. But it's huge, and it doesn't have to be joining an expensive gym. It doesn't have to be going to yoga out. Go stretch in your living room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These are all great things that you can do that don't cost any money and that you can start today. So talking with you has been very interesting and inspiring. And I want to thank you so much for being the first guest on the podcast, The Weight of Change. I know it's inspired me, and I think I'll go take a walk when I get home. And so thank you so much. I know our listeners got a lot of valuable insight from you, so I appreciate you coming on here. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to the Weight of Change video and podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and tell your friends about our channels. We'd like to thank our amazing guest, Diane, better known as Lucy Smiles, and you can check out her amazing video and podcast at the Lucy Smiles Living Room YouTube channel or at lucysmiles.com. You can join us next month with our guest, Kate Toms. She is a renowned fitness expert and lifestyle advocate. Until then, don't just be alive, let's thrive. I'm Carrie, and we are destined to inspire each other.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
You have got this.